Sources say a new U.S. attorney will seek criminal charges against former FBI Director James Comey. They say President Trump's former personal attorney is planning to ask a grand jury to charge Comey with lying to Congress after her predecessor refused. ABC News Washington Bureau Managing Editor Katherine Faulders and ABC News legal contributor James Sample are here with more on that. So, Katherine, what are you hearing about Lindsey Halligan's plans here?
So we're hearing, obviously, that a grand jury will come in today, or at least as soon as today, and Lindsey Halligan herself, at least at this point, is most likely to present what she believes are these charges to a grand jury. The grand jury will then deliberate and make their decision. I am told by senior officials in the administration that they're fully prepared for this grand jury to return what is called a no true bill, which means no indictment, for example. This is a very hard case for Lindsey Halligan to present, especially by herself, if that ends up being the case, before a grand jury, and especially under the circumstances in which she's been advised by career prosecutors in that office that charges shouldn't be brought here, that if charges are brought, it would not only violate DOJ policy, but raise serious ethical concerns. This was presented, according to our sources, in a memo to Lindsey Halligan on her first day on the job on Monday. So it'll be interesting, of course, to see what happens here, but we expect that this could all play out as soon as today and as soon as this afternoon.
James, how much evidence does Halligan need to convince a grand jury to indict Comey?
Well, Diane, what a grand jury always needs is that there's probable cause to find that a defendant committed the crime that they're charged with. And this is such a unique circumstance. You know, grand juries are typically very favorable territory for prosecutors. It's very rare for grand juries not to deliver an indictment, particularly when it is the Department of Justice that's seeking it. But that is kind of self-reinforcing in the sense that typically the Department of Justice would not present cases to a grand jury where it wasn't likely that they could not only achieve an indictment, but to achieve a conviction if the case were to proceed to trial. And based on the reporting that Katherine and her team have done, which has been truly extraordinary, even right in this last segment here, indicating that Lindsey Halligan is herself expected to present this to the grand jury, it is a staggering sequence of events to think about just the last 7 days on this story, given that, you know, we're talking about the dismissal of Trump's own U.S. attorney for the district, the tweets over the weekend imposing pressure out of the ordinary and the extreme. You put in an individual who has no prosecutorial experience, and now you have the clock ticking, at least if the perjury charge arising out of the September 2020 testimony is in fact one of the charges. The statute of limitations runs out on Tuesday. So we are talking about unprecedented in the extreme and a time clock that is ticking very quickly.
James, how high is the bar to prosecute a case like this?
Well, the bar typically to get a grand jury indictment is extremely low, but the bar to actually prosecute, if it is in fact a perjury charge, is very difficult. You need to prove some very specific things, including that the falsehood, if there is a falsehood, was a knowing falsehood and it went to a material fact. That is very, very difficult to do. We don't know why the career and line prosecutors, including the former U.S. Attorney Eric Siebert, declined to prosecute. There are many reasons for a so-called declination that could have been in play here. But one of the reasons is it's very difficult to prosecute these kinds of cases, and especially in a high-profile matter where they had 5 years to investigate and declined to do so. It seems the mountain is tall.
All right. And Katherine, President Trump's also demanding federal prosecutors go after people like New York Attorney General Letitia James, Senator Adam Schiff, and even Trump's own former national security advisor, John Bolton. What are you watching for next?
Yeah, well, I think there's a lot. Of course, this office that's investigating Comey was also investigating Letitia James, and this has obviously contributed to the events last week when the prosecutor that Trump put there, the head of the U.S. Attorney's Office, didn't want to, obviously didn't think there was a case against Tish James. Now, I do think John Bolton, the case of John Bolton is a little bit of a different category here. Obviously, Trump has taken his aim at John Bolton, but again, that was two magistrate judges signing off on that search. I do know that maybe there's some pressure to bring an indictment or bring charges, so that's another one to really keep an eye on.
All right, Katherine Faulders, James Sample, thank you both.